Hello class 10th. Welcome to the online tutorial sessions for economics. I am Avinash Lambert, your economics teacher, and today we are going to continue our second chapter, which is sectors of the Indian economy. In today's video we are going to learn about the organized and unorganized sector. Basically the division of sector can be done on the basis of organized and unorganized sector also. Now students, what is organized sector? Now basically organized sector is that enterprise which is registered, which is being registered by the government. Means government knows about your enterprise, about your firm, and this enterprise, this factory, this firm, this follows rules and regulations which are formed by the government. The government makes law and these laws are followed by these sectors which comes under the organized sectors. Now what are these acts? There are many acts like Minimum Wages Act, Shops and Establishment Acts, Payment of Gratuity Act, Factory Act, and there are so many laws, there are so many rules which these enterprises follow it religiously. Now what are the features of organized sectors? First of all, they give high salaries and there is a job security. Job security means that people are not supposed to be fired at any time. There must be a solid or valid reason for firing them. So the job is secured unless and until you are not doing the bad things in your enterprise. So your job is secured if you are working well. There are less working hours. They don't give lots of working hours to you. There is a rule of working of 48 hours per week. Fine. So labor laws are also applied. The rights of a labor are applied. They treat their laborers lawfully. Provision of paid holidays and other benefits also given. Some allowances are given. Some give the houses, some give the cars, and there are so many things. Paid holidays are also given. Good working condition. Sanitation is there, hygiene is there, drinking water is there. So good working condition. And if you are working overtime, if you are working extra, then you will get the money too. You get the bonus, you get the allowance. So basically the organized sector is a sector which follows all the rules and regulations which are formed by the government. For example, government jobs, they follow the rules. The banks, the schools, all these are the examples of organized sectors. Now let's come to the unorganized sector. Now students, unorganized sector means the sector which covers those enterprises which are not registered, by government, and they do not follow any rules and regulations which are formed by the government. Basically they don't follow any rules or regulation. Just like when you take your bike out without putting helmet and you don't have license to. That's the same unorganized sector, when you don't follow the rules which are framed by the government. So basically this is the unorganized sector. And because they do not follow the rules and regulations formed by the government, they exploit their workers or employees. They misuse their workers. They exploit their employees. Now what are the features? The features of unorganized sector is, first of all, there is low salary. They don't give you high salary. The job is not secured. Anytime, according to their will, they can remove you from their job. They can fire you anytime without any reason. Without any valid reason, they can fire you. There are long working hours. There is no limit to the working hours. Someday you have to work for 8 hours. Someday you have to work for 10 hours. Someday you don't get to go home. So these are the unorganized sectors. Labor laws are not applied. They don't follow the labor laws. No provision for paid holiday or other benefit. They don't give other benefits. And the working condition is also very poor. And if you are working for the overtime, they don't pay you for that. If you are working extra, they are not supposed to give you extra money. And for example, the mostly unorganized sector is found in the agriculture sector, in the field of farming, and also the roadside dhabas. If you have seen, there are small kids. We call them chotus. And those are those people which are being exploited. They are supposed to be in school, not at the dhabas. So these are the sectors which exploit their workers and they don't follow any rules and regulations. and those enterprises are also not registered under the government, and they don't follow any rules and regulations. Instead, they exploit their workers. So that's it for the unorganized and organized sector. Let's come to the next topic. Now students, from 1991, people were losing jobs in the organized sector and they were shifting towards the unorganized sector, and therefore they were facing so many problems regarding the unorganized sector. So people were basically exploited, they were having very less amount of payment, there was no job security, there were certain things which are the demerits of the unorganized sector. Now the question arises, how to protect workers in the unorganized sector? How to protect the workers in the unorganized sector? Now I have differentiated the unorganized features in three things, like protection of workers in rural areas, protection of workers in urban areas, and according to the caste system which prevails in India. Now let's start with the rural areas. Now in rural areas there are certain people like landless agricultural laborers, small and medium farmers, sharecroppers who share the land and give the rent to the tenant, and the artisans like weavers, blacksmith, carpenters and goldsmith. These are those people who suffers the most in the unorganized sector. Now what they need? They need to be provided adequate seeds. They need seeds in proper amount. They need good quality seeds. They need agricultural inputs, raw material, whatever they require, like insecticides, pesticides, fertilizers. They need loans for the irrigation facilities. They need storage facilities so that they can store their surplus amount of production, and they need market outlets. If these things are made available to the rural areas and the people of rural areas, then the labor laws, then the protection of workers in the unorganized sector can be made, so that they will work in this sector for a longer period of time and they can earn some more money. Basically in the unorganized sector, the owner tries to save money, so he cuts off the essential things like sanitation and the other important things. So in that case, if the workers are earning good, then they won't be cutting off important things like sanitation and other important things. So these are the people who suffers a lot in the unorganized sector, and they need to be provided with adequate amount of seeds, the agricultural inputs, the loans, the storage facilities and market outlets. If the government, if they are provided with these things, then they won't be having difficulties in the unorganized sector. Now in urban areas, let's talk about the urban areas. In the urban areas, there are certain people like workers of small scale industries, workers who are working in the small scale industries, or the casual workers which we see at the construction site. Suppose something is being constructed and those type of laborers are always there. The trade and transport, the who work as street vendors, people who work as street vendors, and head load workers, those who carry load on their heads. The garment maker, the people who make cloths, rack pickers. So these are the people who suffers in the urban areas. They are in the unorganized sector in the urban areas. Now what they need? They need the government to support for having raw material. If they are provided raw material at a cheaper price, then they won't be having problem. They also need market outputs. They need marketing outputs so that they can sell their goods efficiently. And they need labor laws because they are the most exploited people. They need some labor laws. They have their own rights. They are also human beings. So they need labor laws. So in urban areas with these things, if government provides them raw material, if marketing outputs are provided, and if labor laws are there, they can survive in the unorganized sector. Now in India, as we all know, there is a big caste system, and there are certain castes which are discriminated. So in India, scheduled caste and scheduled tribes, basically they face the social discrimination. People discriminate. They say that scheduled caste and scheduled tribe, they are lower than them. So that is wrong. All humans are equal. So they face social discrimination which need to be stopped. And how this can be stopped? Laws, strict laws should be made against them. If the government is making strict laws against this social discrimination, then we can cope up with the problem of protection of workers due to the caste, and the people can survive in the unorganized sector. So basically, in rural areas, in urban areas and caste system, if the question arises how to protect workers in the unorganized sector in 3 marks, it's better to differentiate in rural, urban and caste system, so that you get 1 mark for rural, 1 mark for urban and 1 mark for the caste system. So there are your 3 marks question. Now let's come to the last topic for today's video. Students, the last topic for today is the sectors. We have again differentiated the sectors in terms of ownership, that is who owns those assets of that company. So it can be divided in terms of public sector and private sector. So basically in your country there are 2 sectors, private sector and public sector. Now let's start with the public sector. Public sectors are those enterprises which are owned and controlled by the government. Those enterprises which are owned, those whose assets is owned by the government, and the management, the control is also done by the government. So those enterprises are the public enterprises. Now the motive of public enterprises is profit, but the bigger motive is the social welfare. Basically both the motives are the motive of the public sector. They want profit also and they want the social welfare also, that people are having some sort of welfare. Now the prices of their products is determined by the government. If they are meant for the social welfare, then their prices will be very less, and if their motive is for profit earning, then their prices will be very high. The luxurious item which the government is providing, then those items will be of a much higher prices. Now for example, railways, post office and Jal Vibhag. These are some of the examples of the public sector. Your electricity department comes under the public sector. So this is your public sector, those enterprises which are owned by the government. Now let's talk about the private sector. Now private sector, students, are those enterprises which are owned and controlled by individuals or groups of people or by companies which are not owned by the government. Enterprises which are owned and controlled by the individuals or companies, those are the private sector. Government is not involved in these sectors. Now the main motive of the private sector is to profit maximization. Their sole motive is for earning more and more profits. Prices are determined by the market, means they decided according to the demand and supply of that good, whatever good they are producing in the private sector. The prices are determined by the market, that is demand and the supply. Now for example, Tata and Reliance Industries Limited. So these are your private sector. These companies comes under the private sector. They are owned by the private individuals. So this is your sectors in terms of ownership. Now sometimes the question arises, why all the public facilities? In the chapter number 1 development, you have studied about the public facilities, that why only government provides such facilities like roads, dams, bridges, railways, harbors, electricity generation, ration shops, hospitals, schools, housing and other facilities, safe drinking water and nutrition to poor. So most of these activities are provided by the government. Why? Why it is so important for the government to produce these facilities? Why not private sector produce these activities? The only reason for that, because first of all, any individual won't have so much money to produce, to generate such activities. So government is having the big amount of money, so they are the ones who produce. Now the main reason for the government to produce. They can give some of the activities to the individual also. But why they don't do that? Because the private sector will not provide at a reasonable price. That's the answer. Because the private sector will not provide these activities at a reasonable price. They will charge higher amount of money. They will charge higher money. Why? Because their motive is profit maximization and not the social welfare. That's why the government provides the basic essential commodities, essential requirements, essential facilities which are required by each and every citizen of this country. That's why government provides the public facilities. Friends, the last topic for today and for this chapter is the infant mortality rate. You have to learn the infant mortality rate of two states, which is Odisha and Madhya Pradesh. So the infant mortality rate of Odisha is 45 and the infant mortality rate of Madhya Pradesh is 47. So you have to learn it by heart. Maybe it can come in your MCQ question in your 1 mark. So students, that's all for this chapter. You have completed your second chapter, which is the sectors of the Indian economy. So we have completed the 2 chapters and there are still 2 chapters remaining in your economics. So students, see you soon.